All right, I've got 1:30.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to the first afternoon session. Hope everybody had a good time at karaoke and with the keynote. I'm Kyle Malmberg. I'll be moderating this session. So if you have any questions or technical issues, feel free to put that in the chat and we'll try to address those. Just as a note, this session is being recorded so it can be provided later. And please mute your microphones when you're not speaking, just to cut down on any feedback that we may have, etc. I think it was originally said that when participants were joining, it would be automatically muted, but that doesn't seem to be the case so far. So just take that consideration, please. So for this session on mobile access with Sakai Meeting Tool, Fred Dixon is going to present, and he is the product manager for BigBlueButton, as well as the CEO of Blindside Networks, which is manages the BigBlueButton project. And so he's going to talk to us about the meetings tool in Sakai, which is actually run by BigBlueButton. So Fred, take it away.
Great. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time, just a few minutes, talking about the BigBlueButton project, a little bit on the Sakai interface, and then most of the time is going to be on the work that we're doing on the mobile client, an HTML5 mobile client. So for those of you that haven't been too familiar with BigBlueButton, we're an open source project, and our mission is to provide remote students a high quality online learning experience. And that's the real-time learning experience. The project's called BigBlueButton. We've called it that since it started in 2008. And it actually originated at Carleton University in 2007. We open sourced it in 2008, and thus began the project. It's received probably close to 10 years of development now. It's localized in over 25 languages. Our target market is online education, but it's actually used in many other areas. Probably the most one of note and the largest deployment of BigBlueButton on the planet is the US Department of Defense. They built an entire system around BigBlueButton, and they displaced a commercial product they've been using for many years. And looking at the cost savings, they publicly state they save over $12 million a year using BigBlueButton, and that's open source. In terms of the capabilities for online learning, like students engaged with Instructor, we have all the core capabilities, real-time sharing of audio, video, the slides with Whiteboard. We actually added multi-user capabilities to the Whiteboard. You can do chat, you can do polls, the students have emoticons, screen sharing. And recently we added shared notes and breakout rooms. And accessibility is really important to us as well. We're compatible with JAWS and actually NVDA. And we actually added closed captioning support in the recent release. That's live captioning. We, as an open source project, everything you will see in the screenshots, you can set up your own if you wish. You go to docs.bigbluebutton.org. It's linked off of bigbluebutton.org, and the installation instructions are there. You'll have it set up in 30 minutes. And with the Sakai Meeting Tool, you can integrate it into your Sakai site as well. So there's 3 use cases that we focus on. One-to-one, which is virtual office hours or tutoring, small group collaboration where students may collaborate together, or the instructor is in a sort of a more discussion group with the students. And one-to-many, the traditional, I've got some material I want to cover, and I need to engage the students, make sure they're learning, and give them the way they can review the recording afterwards. In terms of the open source project, we have over 300 people helping us localize BigBlueButton. And again, that's, I think it's over 25 languages if you look at our language list. And then anybody can contribute to as well. Right off our doc site, there's a link for going to localization. Every release, we have an external company that will audit us for accessibility. They tell us everything that we need to do. We do it all, and then we come to a point where we release, and then we update the statement of accessibility on our website. We also have a VPAT listed off there as well. Very active open source project. So even in the last little while, the activity is just increasing. And this is partly because of the work that we've been doing on the HTML5 client as well. I think this is August 12th. I'm pretty sure we're over 3,500 forks, other developers who have forked the project off on their own. There's 7 core committers that are responsible for the quality. So we have lots of people contributing to the project, but these 7 are the ones that make sure it's solid, and we treat each release like a product release. So it's very heavily tested. In terms of some of the functionality, and this will segue into the mobile client, if you've used BigBlueButton before on the desktop, It'll look for, this is the newer interface we did last in the fall. We released it in, it's actually up on our website now. We've been using it in our hosting servers. So a very clean interface, very modern interface with groupings of media at the top, all the panels for the windows, and they're movable in that, and the engagement with the students here. I was just drawing Pythagorean theorem. If you start up the audio, very simple. Do you want to choose microphone, listen only? This is what actually happens when you join. You're prompted automatically. And again, very clean. We did a lot of work on the design, making sure it looks very modern so that when users join in, they don't have to install anything. They can just join in and join a session. And very visual as well. So if you want to do a collaborative session with just webcams, here's an example. One of our developer meetings, we had 15 webcams shared. I think the highest I've seen is 23 from a school. So there's no limitation. It's just how much bandwidth you have. And in terms of engagement, just the things that BigBlueButton will help you engage the students. There's polling. So we'll actually read the slides into memory. We do that so it's available to a screen reader. We can see if there's like an ABC or ABCD question and even give you a button. But you have a drop-down menu here or a pop-up menu which you can choose. And you can do a poll and get results back from students. There's emojis. You can ask them how it's going. You have breakout rooms. So this allows you to put students into their own sessions where, say, for 5-10 minutes, they can collaborate and they bring them back. The instructor has the ability to actually monitor the sessions in that they can listen in on a session or they can even join it. It's kind of analogous to walking around the room, listening to students work on, say, around a table. We recently added a multi-user whiteboard. And this was for tutoring. So you have a bunch of math problems, the use cases, and you want students to be able to, go through it with you. You can activate where every person has their own layer they can draw on the whiteboard. And shared notes as well. This is really good for breakout rooms. So students have a sort of a scratch pad where they can collaborate together. It's like a mini Etherpad, and it has fonts in it as well and some formatting. But it's really meant to engage the students. So if you're just having them listen, the best way to engage learning is to have them reapply that knowledge they just took and collaborate amongst themselves, try to capture it, maybe present it back to the group. Again, these are all capabilities that are there if the instructor wants to engage them. Okay, so with Sakai, we have a very deep integration. I always give a shout out to Nuno Fernandez and Adrian Fish, who did the initial implementation for Sakai, which I think is back in 2012. Blindside Networks picked up the responsibility about a year afterwards for maintaining it. We have been maintaining it for over the last 5 years, making sure that it's compatible with each release. And we have quite a few Sakai sites which use BigBlueButton. University of Rhode Island, University of South Alabama, NYU, a number of others. And they're all using it natively within the Sakai Meeting Tool. So it gives a very, very close integration and a very seamless integration for using BigBlueButton. So the Sakai Meeting Tool, you can create meetings, you can set them recorded, duration, permissions, calendar, and you can manage the recordings. I won't go too much into it, but I thought some visuals will help out if you haven't seen it before. So this is what it looks like for the instructors. They can create meetings, they can manage the recordings. When you set up a meeting, you have the ability to give it a title. You can specify whether you want to record it or not. You can say wait for moderator, which means students can't go in there until you have joined the meeting. So you might do that with like a virtual office hour. You can specify their roles. So if you want to create like 4 groups where students can go into anytime and collaborate amongst themselves, call it like room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4. You can create those in the course and say, okay, we're all going to present, and you're going to have a chance, if you want, to practice ahead of time. And you can put it on the calendar, and you can even notify users when have Sakai notify users when the settings change for the meeting. When they click on it, they'll see whether there's anyone available, or the meeting's available, and they can join it, and how many recordings are available as well, and if there's anybody in the meeting as well. And there's a welcome message, and that's what basically gets set in the Sakai tool as well. So you can put some information when these students join the session. And you have the ability to edit the settings, delete a recording, or delete a meeting, edit it, or end it. And ending just kicks everybody out. And then when the recording's available, you can click on the link here, it'll see under the playback, and you can view it. And the instructor can manage the recordings as well. So everything can be done from within inside of Sakai. Okay, so you've got all that. You've got BigBlueButton, you've integrated with Sakai, and now your students come to you and say, hey, I want to use this on my mobile device. And then you turn back to the project and say, Fred, what have you guys been doing to support mobile? And where we've really been working hard is on the HTML5 client. This is to provide mobile access to a BigBlueButton session from your Android device or your iOS device. So in terms of the roadmap, this is just overview. We've been working on this for quite a while, and what we're working towards is getting all the viewer capabilities into place, minus two-way video, because there's bandwidth limitations on the mobile, before the end of this year. And I have a link to a website where you can try it out. And working on Android and iOS, and then in 2018, looking at adding the moderator presenter capabilities to the HTML5 client, seeing it on the desktop, supporting two-way video, and the goal is eventually the HTML5 client becomes the default client. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the HTML5 client. There's differences between the mobile and desktop. So you have differences in screen real estate. How do you take a multiple window application, which we do right now, and adapt it to sort of a flat UI? How do you stream video to low bandwidth devices? How do you account for the platform differences between Android and iOS? I will say in contrast, Flash was very consistent, and it has done very well in terms of providing a consistent layer on Mac, Unix, and PC. Most people don't care what it's implemented in, and when we ask people about what they want, they really want to have an HTML5 client so they can run it on mobile. And there's also development choices, native app versus HTML versus a hybrid of both. So if you look at our design goals, from the UI point of view, we really wanted to design an interface that would work across all platforms. That would become the unified UI for BigBlueButton. We want a pure HTML5 client so it can run on mobile and desktop. We want all the BigBlueButton functionality we have today, all those screenshots that I showed you, all the collaboration, the multi-user whiteboard, breakout rooms. We want all of that into an HTML5 client. And we want to have a server where it supports both. We didn't want to tell our customers or our community, okay, we've stopped development of the current client and we just did an HTML5 client and it has less functionality than the current client. We've watched other vendors kind of do a platform shift and start off with something that has less functionality, not the greatest. So we want to do it where you can run both clients at the same time. Those people on a mobile device can have the option of doing the HTML5 client. And over time, that HTML5 client will become the main client, but it'll be a very smooth migration. So we thought it'd be fun to just show a few mobile concepts from the early days so you can kind of see where the UI has evolved. This was an early mock-up. I think this was running on an iPad. And you had the chat and you had some of the buttons at the top. This is what an early BigBlueButton client looked like on Android. Early, like quite a while ago. These were some wireframe designs. Actually, no, these are actually developer screenshots of them running it. So you could see the chat starting to come together, the users list in the chat. This is not how its final look, but you can see we're iterating. We're trying to come up with what's the design language if you're on a mobile client, how much can we show? Here's where the presentation and the chat are top and bottom. That design didn't last for a while because, again, you kind of focus on one thing at a time. And here are some early prototypes with the background, and then they are running on Android devices. So there's two different UI experiences you're kind of designing for, mobile and desktop. And how do you do both? Well, we decided let's do mobile first because that's the platform we're targeting. So we wanted to do it where the mobile was responsive. Obviously on a mobile client, you can only show so many things. The tablet, you got a bit more area to show. And then the content area where it's maybe the presentation or the webcams, the desktop sharing, there's kind of this center part where people focus on. And obviously in the desktop, you have more space. But again, we're trying to do mobile and design our way to the desktop. So I pulled out some wireframes, and you can start to see a little bit now of the buttons that you see in BigBlueButton. So rounded buttons at the bottom, main area is presentation. If you're on a portrait view, you do have space to show like a webcam. And this is what the chat list looks like, but there's actually the users list is kind of merged with the chat list. So here you have the users below, and then you have the channels that they're chatting in. Public chat is one of them, or maybe a private chat. And then just as like if you turn it landscape, this is what you would see. Again, these are just designs. I'll show you some actual screenshots. More designs, and now you start to see the color come in. And then you can start to see the users list, and then you see the icons and the state with them. And there's what you see in the tablet, so more design as well. And this is like now showing it what it would look like on a tablet, and it would look like on a tablet. So we really tried hard to solve the mobile and only show, this is basically coming down to only showing users the content they need to consume and have an interface that kind of expands. So you can test this out. You can test out the latest build anytime you want at test.bigbluebutton.org. So you can see the work that we're doing. We keep that server updated every week or two. When you go there, you can enter and join the HTML5 client, that would be mobile, or you can join to the Flash client, that'd be the desktop. And you can see them interact together. So if you join, this is what the latest build of the mobile client looks like. Notice the UI, we borrowed some of the UI in the latest updates to the Flash client. So the UI design language is starting to merge. Again, you want to join microphone, listen only. And here I am a presenter inside the Flash client, and the users on the mobile client see exactly the same thing. Again, we wanted that very smooth transition. So when a student comes in a mobile, our promise for the BigBlueButton client is you would never have to ask the student, can you see what I'm pointing at? Same thing applies to the mobile client. So when they come in, they can see the presentation area. And desktop too. So just because we're designing for mobile still means you can run it on a browser on the desktop. It is an HTML5 client. So this is what looks if you're a presenter on the HTML5 client. So you see the icons for the whiteboard tools, advancing slides and actions such as upload icons and upload documents and so on. Here's the users list, and you can see the various state. And there's the chat as well. In this case, it's the public chat. And there's kind of a mobile view of BigBlueButton versus a desktop view. So you can see how the design encompasses both. So with mobile, the reason we're able to do this is WebRTC. So that's the web real-time communication. And the browsers are getting very good at real-time communication. So I have to give a big shout out to Apple. I thought we were going to have to go down the road of designing a native app, but they actually added an iOS 11, which released in September. They added support for WebRTC. So you can go to test.bigbluebutton.org with your iPad or your iPhone, if it's updated, and you can do two-way audio. The audio is the Opus codec, which is like the best codec out there for audio. I should put it this way, better than Speaks, which was the previous really high standard. The audio video codecs, VP8, VP9. VP9 is, again, you're going to get more resolution with less bandwidth. May not mean so much on the mobile device in terms of resolution, but definitely the bandwidth. A lot of the browsers are starting to support simulcast, where when they're broadcasting a video stream, they'll broadcast a high bandwidth video stream and a low bandwidth video stream. The browsers also support forward error correction. Like on Chrome, it will send audio packets with a little chunk of the previous audio that's really highly compressed. So if a packet's being missed, when the client receives it, it can use that. When the client receives the next packet, it can receive that highly compressed version of the previous packet and kind of smooth things out. And there's stats. The browsers are providing acceptance tests, and there's some good standards as well. All this has been done by standards-based organizations, which is, again, great. Google and Microsoft and Apple and Mozilla are all working towards providing a common WebRTC framework. And we're basically building on top of that with the HTML5 client. So I said our goal is to do a first release of the HTML5 client for mobile before the end of this year. So that will include all the capabilities except two-way video. That will come in a future update. But for sharing content and engaging students, you'll find all the pieces are there. Presentation whiteboard, chat, emojis, polls, breakout rooms, closed captioning, and accessibility support as well. Putting a lot of work to make sure the HTML5 client has the proper tab order, ARIA tags, and hidden callouts for the screen readers. And then in 2018, we are moving towards building on top of that platform and adding the other capabilities, shared notes, desktop sharing, multiple webcams. And this is, when I say breakout rooms here, it's more of like initiating this from the presenter. So all the presenter and moderator capabilities. And again, our goal is that we'll basically, at some point, have a unified platform. Flash has 3 more years before end of life. We'll have moved over long before then. And you can see the work that we're doing right now in terms of coming to the HTML5 client for the mobile. And some of the designs like group chats, you can see here, and shared notes would be just another type of content that you'd be able to see. So there'd be the users list, the channels, and the shared notes, sort of how the UI expands to show all of it. And in terms of webcams, these are just some wireframes. There's lots of space to show one just webcam on the right-hand side. Oops. 2 webcams, multiple webcams. Sorry, back to 1 webcam. This is a bit more high fidelity markup. And then here you can do like 2x3. And here's like 1 main webcam, others below it. So again, this concept that there's like a content area where it can be showing like the presentation, the desktop sharing, or the webcams. And there's an example of another. And here we can always put in placeholders if we want to have every person have sort of like something up on the webcam board. Maybe they don't sharing a webcam. You can just put their name, their initials. So for us on the BigBlueButton project, it really is mobile. And there's some analytics stuff that we're going to want to get into Sakai as well. What you're going to see in the next version of BigBlueButton is the release of the mobile client. And in the main client, the Flash client, you're going to see support for multiple presentations and chat and some guest management. So there's some customers that are pulling us in the direction where they want to be able to approve a guest before they get in. You see that in other web conferencing systems. So that's the source for information on the project. And again, we focus on one market, online learning. So I'm going to leave it up here. I'm going to go back to my chat and see.
There was, looks like there's a couple questions.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to read those? Or do you want me to read those?
No, I can see here. Can students create their meetings, or is only access through the instructor? So only the instructor can create the meetings inside of Sakai. But as I said earlier, the instructor could create a whole bunch of meetings where the students go in as moderators, so that they would be able to have sessions that they could go into, and as a moderator, they can make themselves presenter. Yeah. The videos are not stored inside of Sakai, so they're stored on the BigBlueButton server. If you get hosting from one of the vendors that provide hosting, they'll probably store the recordings for you on Amazon S3. And as an open source project, you could change where the videos are stored. You can put on a NAS or shared folder, but you probably just put it on a single BigBlueButton server and give it lots of space. User max of 25. Actually, there is no limit in terms of the number of users. The largest number of users that I've seen in a meeting was 276 users. I don't think, yeah, that was the largest. And I know the Sakai virtual conference last year got into the 200s, and it was fine. We designed BigBlueButton to be, from my product management hat on, solid, usable, and features in that order. So it has to be really, really stable, has to be usable, and then we add features to it over time. And HIPAA compliant, I know what you mean. For HIPAA, I would not say that we would be HIPAA compliant. We do not warrant that we provide secure collaboration. Anybody who does, I would question them, because there is no such thing as secure collaboration. We do a lot of things to make sure the sessions are secure. You can't join it unless you come in through Sakai. A lot of the media is encrypted, but yeah, we're not trying to do a HIPAA compliant product for the healthcare industry. We would look at things like FERPA and GDPR in Europe and make sure that your content is your content, that we do everything we can to protect it, and that you have control over it as an open source project. So good questions. Other questions? I'd be interested if, I mean, with my product management hat on, if you guys want to throw in any questions in terms of like what you've seen, what you'd like to see. Part of this is sharing with you our roadmap towards developing an HTML5 client, making it very easy for you to add an HTML5 client to Sakai so that you could provide mobile collaboration amongst your users, doing it in a way that's fully open source, so that you could run your own BigBlueButton server, which I know some of you are. Or you could go to any of the companies that are providing hosting, just like you can go to Longsight, for example, and they can host Sakai for you, or you could run Sakai yourself. I can see some of our customers here, so ask me a hard question if you want. But that's a, thanks, Becky. Yeah, it's about engagement, right? Like, can you get the students writing on the whiteboard at the same time, engage them with polls, put them into breakout rooms, have them create content, require them to present back to the group? A lot of the audience here are probably higher ed. There is a strong K-12 use of BigBlueButton as well. Homeschooling, they were the ones that drove the multi-user whiteboard because they really wanted to engage. There's a fairly large math or tutoring organization in the States. I think they're government funded. I wouldn't call them a tutoring organization, but they're there to help students pass their math, and they use BigBlueButton to engage them. I would suspect most of you are probably split between Android and iOS. Is there anybody who's like deployed Android devices at their school or iOS devices at their school? Or it might just be for students to give them the option to come in through a mobile device. I think there was a session here as well on the mobile, like running Sakai on a mobile device. Has any of the schools provided that ability or encouraged students to access Sakai through their mobile device? Yeah.
I know we have students that do, but I don't know that it's widely touted or pushed.
Yeah, so one question might have been like, how would a student get into the BigBlueButton mobile client through Sakai? Well, if they're opening up Sakai on their mobile device, we want them to be able to just click the meeting tool and click join. And it would come to an intermediate page that would do a quick check to see if they're on an Android or iOS device. And if it would redirect them to HTML5 client. For the instructor, they would just see people come into the session. There wouldn't be anything that the instructor wouldn't get any special notification that said, you know, Fred's on a mobile device, because we don't want to have any special notification. We just want the instructor to be able to teach students and not care. Aravind, yeah, so that's possible. In the open source project, the recorded playback actually uses Popcorn.js, and it's a synchronized playback of HTML images, scalable vector graphics for the whiteboard marks, a M4V file for the webcams and the audio, and then another M4V file for the desktop sharing. But it's not like a single unified video file. Some of the companies that provide hosting for BigBlueButton actually provide you a single unified video file. So they took the same content generated from a BigBlueButton session, and they built up their own record and playback format that's a pure HTML or single H.264 file. Of course, to generate H.264, you have to have a license from MPEG-LA, which I know some of them have done. So if you were interested to explore it, I would definitely reach out to some of the companies that provide hosting. So Becky, the roadmap is that the HTML5 client will be available to the open source. It's actually all, the latest builds are all available now on test.bigbluebutton.org. If you go to docs, in fact, if I can go, I'll go there now actually. Go to docs.bigbluebutton.org. You can see there's a lot of stuff on HTML5 right now. So there's an overview of the project, the vision, scope, the features that we're doing, some of the user interface, the architecture, some detailed stuff. The important one is you can actually install this now. So if I go to HTML5 client install, you can install on top of our 2.0 beta, which is where the development of the HTML5 client is going. 2.0 was released in beta in September timeframe. So we're working right now on just finishing up all the issues we find. We tend to run the betas under heavy load for many months. And then once we can't find any more bugs, and we've had it in our community for 2 weeks as a release candidate, then we release it. So our motto is release on quality, not dates. And the same thing is going to the HTML5 client. We've got a lot of testings going on it now. Michael, so the question was, is there a way for participants outside the group to view recorded sessions? Yes. So the recorded sessions ultimately yield a static URL. So when a BigBlueButton server, when you look at a recording, you would never guess the URL, but you would access it through Sakai. Once you're viewing the URL, you could take that URL as an instructor, and you could send it out to somebody else, or you could have it inside of let's say, a wiki page inside of Sakai, and allow people to access it as well, let's say in other sections or other courses. I know some of the companies that provide commercial support have added like a few more layers where you actually can't share, or they can restrict sharing of the URL, but it's meant to be shareable. Yes, so Becky's pointed out, are we a Blindside Networks customer? Yes. With my other hat on, I'm the CEO of Blindside Networks. So we are going to finish this for the open source by end of the year. And then in early 2018, we'll be incorporating our hosting environment. There's likely going to be some trials, and we'll let our customers know if they want to try out the early versions on the hosting environment. So our goal is that you don't have to do anything when we finally release it, but you have a chance to try it out ahead of time, and we make sure that it works really well for you. So I will say early 2018, but that will of course depend on feedback and stability. Most important thing for us is stability, then usability, and then features. And right now, the current client is very stable. One customer in particular, over the last 2 years, has done 20 million minutes in BigBlueButton. Their students, instructors have served over 1.2 million users in over 250,000 sessions. So there's a lot of people who have developed or delivered a lot of online courses using BigBlueButton. So a lot of work's going in the HTML5 client, and we're going to make sure it's really solid before we release it. By the way, I'm actually doing this in Orlando. So if any of you here in Orlando going to the Online Learning Consortium, OLC, we'll be there exhibiting for the next 3 days. So this is why I guess you can't really tell it's a hotel room, but I'm doing this just before going over. The exhibit starts at 5 o'clock, so 3 hours from now. If anybody's there, definitely come over. Any other questions or feedback?
Does not appear that there is.
So you could stop the recording if you want. Thanks, Becky. Or I guess I'll just edit it after. Yeah, so you guys